technologies, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book Outcompete, and of course, he's a best selling author, no other than Mr. Mayur Palta.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, and welcome to Book 101, Mr. Mayor. And can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Happy to. So, my name is Mayur Palta. I know the word mayor can be a tongue twister. Some people call it mayor. They twist the words a lot. So, it's mayor, like may your dreams come true. And I'm an entrepreneur who's turned into a technologist. So, long story short, about 20 years ago, I was trying to build and run a telecom company focused on optic fiber and telecom. Like most business leaders, I was facing similar competitive frustrations, like losing business to competitors, declining market share, having no idea about the moves the competitors were making. Net, the business failed due to competition and a price war broke out in the telecom industry. For the last 20 years, I've been on this pursuit looking for answers. Answer to the question, how do startups and billion dollar companies outsmart the competition? So during these 20 years, I kept looking for answers as an entrepreneur building other startups, as a technologist working for Fortune 500 companies, billion dollar companies in corporate America like Amazon and Oracle and Dell EMC and Hewlett Packard, the list goes on. And as a student of the business, seeking research advice from academia and continuing executive education at institutes like Harvard Business School, continuing education at places like Stanford, as a lifelong learner reading hundreds of books written on competition. So
Well,
it is at Amazon that I got this knack of writing and started documenting these answers to this burning question. After leaving Amazon in 2021, about 18 months ago, is when I started writing this book.
interesting, Mr. Mayor. So, what is the big difference of being entrepreneur and technologies?
Oh, this is a huge difference. I think as an entrepreneur, um, building startups, you are taking this insane amount of risk, and it's extremely painful to take all the burden on yourself as the prime sole owner of the business and the leader for the business. So you have it is like it's like it almost feels like pushing a boulder up the hill. And you all have seen those images in on social media and memes where someone is pushing a boulder up the hill, just to articulate how painful that is. In my experience, the biggest difference has been, um, as an entrepreneur, you have to take lots of risks without actually knowing how it's going to turn out. And as a technologist, you take different types of risk and bet on different types of technologies. And that changes very fast too. As you know, you've seen the whole notion of artificial intelligence and generative AI taking off in the last 6 to 8 months with the invent of OpenAI and ChatGPT. But both have inherent risk. As an entrepreneur, you kind of have that control over your destiny and the time, how you allocate time. And as a technologist, you are always, as a lifelong learner, trying to keep up with what's coming.
Very well said, Mr. Mayor. So, what age that you realize that you are good in writing?
I think I'm still working on writing. You can always improve. It's like being in the permanent beta state, always learning. But at Amazon Web Services, I was doing an executive education program at Harvard Business School. I went to my professor. His name is Professor Gary Pisano. He teaches technology strategy and innovation. I went to him with a very simple question, like how do businesses, large companies and startups, how do they outlast themselves? How do you build for the long term? And his answer to me was, you need to go learn about culture, And he said, no, there's no better place for you to learn strong culture than Amazon. So it's when I landed at Amazon Web Services, their cloud division. They have a very strict culture about writing. The PowerPoints are not entertained. You don't work in Microsoft PowerPoint. You work on writing narratives and doing research, 2 pages and 6 pages to articulate your ideas. Because Jeff Bezos truly believes that the process of writing brings clarity to your own thoughts, and it brings clarity to the overall subject. So no longer do you have to spend time in meetings just bringing someone else up to speed over PowerPoint as to what's going on. You start the meeting, everybody reads a narrative that you've written as the proposer for the meeting. You spend the first 10 minutes reading the document. What kind of decisions are we about to make? You read all the research that the person has done. You have looked at the pros and cons of that decision, why the decision should not be pro or should be made in favor as well as against. And then you have a healthy discussion to take the decision there and then. So by doing that for about 4 years and 8 months, it just became a habit of writing your thoughts, clarifying your thoughts. And that's when I started documenting these answers to the question of how do billion dollar companies outsmart the competition.
Who are your favorite authors that influence you the most?
My favorite authors, there are two. One is Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek has a couple of these very famous books like Start with the Why. He has written several other books. The recent one I've been reading is called the Infinite Game. And the other book he's written is Leaders Eat Last. Apart from this, there are a few authors. There's one from Japan, one another author of the book Ikigai, which is about finding your purpose in life, finding your Ikigai, and Stephen Covey, which talks about the 7 habits. Um, and then there are a few. I have a long list. I read a lot.
Yes. So, if you describe your favorite author's writing, what is it or what are they?
The favorite, I think, Simon Sinek is talks about this concept of starting with the why. He's a very popular optimist and best-selling author. He's been working to he's given TED talks on the topic of how do great leaders inspire action. It's one of the most widely viewed of all TED talk of all times. And he talks about why, as a leader, you should communicate when you start with the why rather than telling anyone the what and the how. You should start with the why.
So, do you think in the future will be the next Simon Sinek?
I do not believe so. I think we all have different places on this planet Earth. My purpose is very different. My purpose with this book is threefold. Number one, there is a lot of confusion in the world right now about artificial intelligence and this notion of that the world is competing with AI. My number two, so it's about leaning towards the future. The second is learning from the past. So this book will offer you a different perspective and lessons learned from real world situations like failing a business, price wars, telecom wars, software, tech rivalries, and now even AI rivalries in the technology space. And third, most important, which is close to my heart, is doing good. So proceeds from this book go towards empowering underprivileged children with the gift of education. I've partnered with a nonprofit called Vibha, which has been doing this for last 10 years or so and raised about $18 million to empower these underprivileged children. Another nonprofit I've partnered with in the last month alone is um, is run by students at Cornell University who are sponsoring and supporting an orphanage in Zambia with supplies of books and other ways they could support that community overall.
Wow, interesting, Mr. Mayor, and we salute you of what you're doing. So, outcompete. How did you crafted it?
My process of crafting Outcompete was first and foremost focused on working backwards from who I'm trying to communicate to. The objective was to educate business leaders, make them aware of this lack of awareness, bridge this awareness gap of knowing about competition, paying attention to competition, and building their organization compete muscle. This is just something that a lot of leaders do not pay attention to because it's not taught to them in their business schools or in their academia, or is not something they pay attention to thinking very frequently. As a result, they end up being in a playing catch up situation where another competitor is taking away their business, or their market share is declining, or they don't know what the competitive landscape is shaping up. Think of businesses like Nokia, which got hit by Apple iPhone, and the impact it had on Nokia overall. Once a legend in telecom, no longer a legend anymore, and it was not their fault. They just got out competed. So the audience is business leaders and strategists who work in the space of business in hyper competitive markets. So I worked backwards from there and created a very simple way to think about this. One is, there are three things. One is knowing, the second is doing, and the third is being. Knowing, a new way of thinking, a new mental model to think about competition. So I've introduced a new framework in this book called the Outcompete operating system, which is a very simple, practical guidance on how do you build your organization structure and compete muscle to last for a long time. Second is about doing, and doing is about the how to, like how do you go about building your organization, how do you go about beating the competition. And that introduces seven principles. These strategic principles in, weave in real life stories from companies like AWS and Oracle and Dell EMC, from my own startups, to land the key points. And lastly, the third part is about being a strategist. And that being a strategist, learning from the most popular competitive strategists in history, to investing, building competitive intelligence flywheels, how to do that, and being a strategist, even learning from other fields of life and how to invest in a competitive strategy function.
Wow, interesting, Mr. Mayor. But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in the United States, especially in the state of California. You are from California, right, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So in California, I got 114 places. So I just do like 20, name them all. So thank you, California, for supporting this podcast. Say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. In San Francisco, I get 81%. Los Angeles, Irvine, San Jose, Mountain View, Santa Ana, Sacramento, Moreno Valley, Southgate, Oakland, Sunnyvale, Riverside, San Diego, Fresno, Donny, Fontana, Burlingame, Thousand Oaks, Anaheim, Westminster, North Hollywood, Pleasant Hill, Glendale, and a lot more. I have 114 places in California. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Mr. Mayur Palta. So, Mr. Mayor, outcompete what behind your debut book?
Well, what outcompete, I believe, is trying to come up with a verb and an action which drives the point home of how do you outcompete in the real world. Um, think of laws of the jungle, for example, where if you are the lion or the hunter or the predator, you have to outcompete your prey in order to survive and to and not to starve to death. While if you are the one who's being hunted, you have to run fast enough and outcompete your predator in order to survive. Um, Business tends to be a very cutthroat and very hyper competitive type of venture. So a lot of those analogies hold true here as well. That's so it's to start with paying attention to something that we all should master as a skill, which is how to outcompete.
So, according to Miss Christy Rutherford, incredible insight. So, what are the elements that you put in your book that is really incredible?
I think what I've heard from folks who've read the book and provided feedback is the fact that these are real world stories. This is nonfiction. This is from the real world. These are lessons learned from actually doing things, building companies, building programs. So there is no, it separates the fact from the fiction. And a lot of these lessons are learned the hard way, making tons of mistakes. I believe that is what some of the folks who have reviewed have provided in as a feedback, that they love the fact that this is real. And as an author, I have not shied away from admitting my mistakes, and admitting that I made tons of mistakes, and hopefully others can learn from it.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Mayor. So, according to Avnit Singh, great insight and easy read. Give us an example, an insight that you shared to your book.
Sure, I'm happy to. I think one of the things which might be insightful is a lot of companies and businesses, and even in real life, we are not in a pure competitive state through and through. We exist in this cooperation stage where we are competing and collaborating at the same time. This notion of cooperation, you're competing with the other company, but you're also partnering with the same time. Think, for example, Apple competing with Samsung. On one hand, both make, smartphones, but on the other hand, Apple depends on Samsung to develop the screens for the iPhone. So we operate in this duality, this world where on one hand you're competing, and on the other hand you are also cooperating and forming an alliance. This question, so this is an overarching new force in business that we must understand. This question was asked of Amazon CEO and founder Jeff Bezos as to how do you reconcile cooperation, because on one hand you could be competing, and one hand you could be collaborating. And his response was, think of the cloud business for AWS, for example. On one hand, there is Amazon Prime competing with Netflix. On the other hand, uh, Netflix is a customer of Amazon Web Services, and the employees work really hard to make Netflix successful. So this is like a one mental model, a new force in the five forces model that we should consider, which is cooperation. Another type of insight you could consider is the notion of building communities. The world operate in communities now with the invent of influencers and social networks. Humans like to belong. Humans like to be part of communities and have a sense of that cohort mindset. So building communities that can help your support your business can accelerate your growth drastically. That's why you see these invent of marketplaces like Instacart and a number of different these hotel businesses getting disrupted by Airbnb, Uber. This is the notion of sitting between the consumer and the supplier while building communities around them.
Very well said, Mr. Mayor. So, congratulations. You are in number 73 in business management science, according to Amazon, 135 in management skills, and 251 in management science. It's an achievement indeed as your debut book. Do you think in our 21st century what the business needs to boom or to competitive to each other?
Great question. I think the number one thing business needs is building a culture of customer obsession, and offering customers and building around things which are constant. Let me give you an example of what I mean by constant. If you go to a customer in the year 2033 or 2053, 10 years from now, even 30 years from now, and ask them, Mr. or Miss Customer, would you like more choices, lower prices, and better performance? The answer would still be yes. So the point that I'm trying to make is these are three constants in time that you can build your business around: better choice selection, lower prices, and better performance. If you can achieve all three, that is awesome. Now, with the invent of things like artificial intelligence and generative AI, that path is getting accelerated because the cost of computing is going down, the cost of looking for answers is going down. These chatbots and other large language models are bringing down that cost, offering more choice and giving you better performance. And it's almost like a race to zero in commoditization of all of this. So, how can you invest in leveraging these cutting edge technologies to your advantage before your competitor does? Because the real elephant in the room is, do you have a grip on your competition or does your competition have a grip on you? That would be determined based on how you invest in your business for the long term.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Mayor. Let's talk about what happening to Twitter. Mr. Musk is changing everything. Do you think it affects the credibility of Twitter itself?
Great point. Then this is fairly recent. Even the messages and alerts you're getting on your phone say X now, it doesn't say Twitter anymore, which is the recent development in the last 48 hours. The name change piece seems like more branding and positioning. You see, even Facebook changed its name from Facebook to Meta eventually, and that was for different reasons of doing damage control to the brand of Facebook with things like Cambridge Analytica, the whole scam that happened, influencing elections and so forth, and mining voter data. On the other hand, there are a lot of other companies which have done name changes just to create a different type of momentum. I believe I do follow Mr. Musk, but not a whole lot closely because some of his actions are quite controversial. But what his overarching theme and vision is to bring all the companies and entities he owns into one umbrella company and create like a conglomerate. And the idea there is creating a company called X, where X includes things like Tesla and SpaceX and Solar City and assets from Twitter and the new AI companies formed, and to bring all of that together. And why is that? Because the whole is greater than the sum of its part. Think of other entities like Alphabet and Apple and Amazon and other entities like that, and Microsoft, where the whole remains greater than the sum of its parts.
Is it part of your book to discuss that rebranding of a company?
The branding of companies. Oh yes, yes. So in one of the chapters, which is dedicated to shaping the narrative, it's all about how do you shape the narrative about your business, your brand, and how it fits in the world. Now, the late famous Steve Jobs used to talk about this very in a very interesting way when he talked about Apple in the early years of forming a brand, where people want to know what Apple stands for. Who is Apple, and who does Apple stand for as as a business or as a brand? And his notion was that Apple stands for uh, people, leaders, and people who inspire us, who think different. So think different became an entire campaign, but the idea was to celebrate this diversity of thought and call talking about think different. He talks about an example of initially a lot of companies who were in the dairy business were trying to sell milk, and nobody will buy milk because it talked about the advantages of what are the health benefits of drinking milk. What's in it for you by drinking milk? And nobody paid attention because it was too factual and talking about the what. And the company changed that around and started a campaign called Got Milk, and suddenly that transformed that industry completely. And now, even stretching that further, we have things like A2 milk and the whole revolution going around A2 milk, for example. So the point I'm trying to make is, you as the owner of the brand can shape the narrative in the market. If you do not like the rules of the game, you have control over influencing how the rules, you can influence and shape the rules overall on how the game should be played. Another example to point out is this theme of convergence, where you are able to create new categories altogether to shape the narrative of the business. Um, to give you examples of new categories, like Uber is a new category of business altogether. So is Airbnb, or new category altogether. So you can be the disruptor and create a new category altogether to influence and shape that brand.
Very well said, Mr. Mayor. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chefs in one of the best restaurants in downtown Toronto. And please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about focaccia. Focaccia, people, one of the traditional or trademark of Italian cuisine. So please do listen. Food 101. Plus, please do grab a copy of our books. Not only one, but seven volumes already. So, volume one, basics. Volume two, essentials. No, fundamentals. Volume three, essentials. Volume four, Greek cuisine. Volume five, Japanese cuisine. Volume 7, Indian cuisine. But please do check all those volumes. Those are my 100 episodes of my Food 101. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Mayor, what is the best highlight of Outcompete?
The best highlight of Outcompete is 21 years of hard-learned lessons from competitive failures and successes. The best highlight is how to do it, to keep it simple, and yet be able to apply this outcompeting operating system to your own business. Lot of companies and corporations have successfully applied this model to their business and have seen great success. And they now run a profitable and frustration-free business in a very hyper-competitive industry. And you can too. And you can find the book on Amazon with the name Outcompete: How Startups and Billion-Dollar Companies Outsmart the Competition. And I'm pretty sure Daniel can point you to where to find it in the podcast too.
Definitely, people. I'm gonna share you the link. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd compete if you compare to a classic business book. Which one you can compare?
I think the book that it's getting compared to the most, based on feedback, is Competitive Strategy by Michael Porter. However, Michael Porter is a legend who's created this whole framework called the Five Forces model back in the 80s, or perhaps late 70s. The difference here is we are not talking about the theory, and we're not talking about subjective academic research. We're talking about real world lessons applied and brought to you in a very simple, digestible way that you can apply those to. You don't need to be an expert.
Yes, indeed. What do you think? What are the pitfalls of the business nowadays? Why they are not getting higher and higher? I mean, they start, but they did not succeed.
Great point. I think there are there's a lot of research done in this space. So I'll give you a very factual answer. The factual answer is that there are a number of different reasons why businesses fail or do not succeed. About 90% of the startups fail because 90% of new businesses usually just shut down. Top 20 reasons why startups fail are: either they don't have a valid market need, like a customer need. Second, that's 42% of the cases they don't have a validated market need. About 29% of the time, they just run out of cash. They can't raise funding fast enough than the burn rate of their business, of the startup. The third, they may have not the right team with the right expertise to execute. That's another 23%. But then another 19% is what's relevant to our conversation, that 19%, almost 20% of the businesses fail because they get outcompeted. And that is way out of your control. You can control the market validation, you can raise funding, but still get outcompeted and will still fail. So the objective of all of this is making sure you pay attention to competition and develop this as a skill.
Mr. Mayor, can you give us five brand of companies that do you think it will last until the 22nd century?
Very difficult to predict. However, I can give you some take on these things because the list has changed even in the last 20 years. But the common notion, I cannot give you the names, but I can give you some symptoms and some indicators to look for.
Okay.
First, do they what is the DNA of the company? Are they innovators? Are they leveraging the cutting edge technology to move the entire humanity in the next? Number two, do they have a culture of innovation? Do they have a strong culture to take ownership, to outcompete other competitors, as well as to innovate? That's number two. Number three is what types of businesses are they in? Are they moving towards high margin businesses which are apt towards the new business models? Or are they still stuck with legacy business models which are very traditional on premises, brick and mortar? Number four are businesses which are trying to solve real world problems which humanity is facing and is about to face. And number five is how much attention do they give to their customers in terms of customer obsession, and how much attention do they pay to the communities they build their businesses in, from, for example, sustainability standpoint, as well as caring for the communities they operate in.
Very well said, Mr. Mayor. So, what is your message for those aspiring businessmen or businesswomen that they want to put their own business?
I would give you just three lessons. First, lean towards the future. Discover more ideas, strategies that you can apply to your to businesses. Number two, learn from the past. There's a lot you can learn from history and past failures and successes. And number three, do good. Do good for the business, for your customers, and the communities that you build your business around.
Can you specify, you mean do good?
Do good means don't be evil. Like, don't be have purpose beyond just profit. And that purpose should be to lift the communities you build your businesses in and lift the employees with you, and the entire ecosystem with you. And don't be just greedy for just profit for your own business alone. When you build a community or an ecosystem around you, the everybody wins. No longer is a zero sum game.
Definitely, people. So, if you're building a business, number one, of course, eco-friendly, because we are facing a threat, wildfires and everything. Climate change, people, must be the company is eco-friendly, right? Number two, you need to give honor to your employees because they're the one who's giving you money. Without them, you're nothing. Of course, you have a vision and mission that different from the others to succeed. Right, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely, Daniel.
Can you please invite our listeners to buy your book?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I would invite all the listeners to take a look and consider the book Outcompete. There are three things in for you. One, you will enhance your own careers. You'll collect actionable techniques you can use right away in your business or your careers or your personal life. The hard fact of life is that people who read business books tend to earn more. Second, you will learn a lot from mistakes that others have made and lessons learned in a very structured and simple, digestible way. And third, you'll do good by contributing to these causes that we've talked about. That the proceeds from the book go towards empowering underprivileged children with the gift of education via vibha.org, as well as supporting an orphanage in Zambia.
Yes, I 100% salute you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor Palta, outcompete how to start out. $1 billion companies outsmart the competition. It's one of a kind. If you're starting to make your own business, think big, people.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Maricon people, see you soon.